Welcome to this week's edition of World Crisis Radio. This is Webster Tarpley speaking to you from Washington, D.C., and right now it's Friday, the 16th of December. The world strategic crisis, basically the convergence of two key elements. One, the ongoing collapse of the U.S. empire. Yesterday, 15th of December, 2011, the United States claims, Obama claims, to have brought the Iraq War to a conclusion, and we're told that all U.S. forces officially, except for the Marines who guard this huge embassy, have now left the country, and therefore the Iraq War is supposedly over. First of all, this is not true. There are tens of thousands of private contractors, i.e. mercenary killers, who remain behind, but still the fact is that the official phase, the institutional phase of this tragic, futile war, this has come to an end. 1 million Iraqi dead. 1 million. That's on top of the million who died as a result of the economic sanctions during the 1990s. So it's a combination of Madeleine Albright's economic sanctions and James Baker's economic sanctions, because this goes back 20 years, plus the bombing carried out by Mad Dog Bush the Younger. So this is now ending. This is a somber, tragic, horrendous chapter of world history. This is a monument to the endless incompetence and bloodthirstiness of these depraved neocons who were the ones who brought it to you. And, of course, Dick Cheney and his deranged daughter are still out there preaching fear, hatred, war, destruction, right? The apocalypse, in effect. So this is ending. Now, what's the effect? First of all, in the mentality of the U.S. ruling class, a Mayagez moment. They're feeling low. They're feeling down. They see their mortality. They see the inherent frailty of their institutions. They're certainly aware of their collapsing empire. And therefore, the danger is they will lash out. This is very real. The last time we had a moment like this was April 1975. It was those helicopters lifting off from the roof of Ellsworth Bunkers, U.S. Embassy in Saigon. Used to be known as the Bunker. Ellsworth Bunker, the U.S. ambassador, at least for quite a while, and this embassy. And you'll remember the line of people, the poor, desperate collaborators of the U.S. trying to get out and save themselves, and a lot of them hanging on the runners of the helicopters and then falling to their deaths. Right? A really horrendous moment. This time, the camera choreography is better, right? This time it's done with ceremonies, flags being lowered, dignified event. Right? Barky Obama goes to Fort Bragg and talks to the troops. But still, this is a defeat. This is a defeat writ large. So remember that in then April, May 1975, the Ford administration, smarting from that tremendous humiliation, lashed out against Cambodia, against the Khmer Rouge. Killers, of course, genocidalists in their own right. But still, the Khmer Rouge had interfered with some U.S. Freighter called the Mayagez, captured the crew and so forth. So Ford made a big deal about bombing to smithereens the small town on the southern coast of Cambodia where this had occurred. And, of course, in the process, about 25 more U.S. forces got killed. But the town, I believe, was just about completely flattened. So this is now, to some degree, the mood. The other thing, of course, is, from the point of view of the Principals Committee, and let me stress that it's the Principals Committee running the United States, not the clown Obama, not the stand-in Obama. I'm having to laugh at, I'm reading some analyses about how Obama is forcing Hillary to do what she doesn't want to do, that the evil Obama is forcing the good Hillary to attack Putin and Russia, and she's really in favor of the reset. She believes in the reset, and Obama is sabotaging this. This is, what can we say? CIA disinformation is all we can say to that. The country is not being run by Obama. Obama is someone who's thinking about his election campaign. He goes out and does his idiotic public events. He's successfully conned the U.S. population into parts of it anyway. Parts of them are demanding the payroll tax cut to destroy Social Security in the medium to long term. So Obama can now go to the ruling class and say, far from having the Democratic Party resist the destruction of Social Security, thanks to Obama, the Democratic Party is now demanding the medium to long-term bankruptcy of Social Security as a price for getting this stupid payroll tax cut through. Parenthetically, you want to give a tax cut, leave Social Security out of it, Obama. Just have a $1,000 or $1,500 tax credit, refundable, and you've done it. Leave Social Security out, Obama, you treacherous Wall Street operative. But Obama's concerned with that, and otherwise he sits in the family residence of the White House in his underwear, drinking beer, and God knows what substances are being consumed there, and he's watching sports. He's watching ESPN. Now, who's running the United States? Hillary Clinton, Leon Panetta. Hillary Clinton, of course, Secretary of State. Leon Panetta, now at the Pentagon, Secretary of Defense. Tom Donilon, the head of the National Security Council, a non-entity, you may say, but a bureaucrat, senior executive service, and all that. You've also got Eric Holder, the totalitarian thinker, and the dominant personality, of course, General Petraeus. So I would say at this point, anybody who is making a big brouhaha about attacking Obama is actually covering for the real power, which is now in this oligarchical principals committee. That's what's running the United States. And watch, all of the CIA counter gangs are going to be attacking Obama now, and it's going to be, in many ways, to cover up the fact that when you look at what's been going on with Iran, when you look at what's been going on with Pakistan, who does things like that? Who has the expertise? Who has the recent experience in the theater? Petraeus. Petraeus embodies the oligarchical Bonapartist option that is a giant step towards dictatorship in the United States. You can say he's already in the process of a creeping coup behind the scenes. Now, don't look for this in journalistic accounts. You're not going to find it, because this is something that they don't write about. And no right-wing reactionary and no Wall Street Democrat is going to tell you any of these things. It's embarrassing in various ways for all of them. And we don't need to explain what, but you can see it cuts against the demagogy that these people are pushing. So the question now is, in the Maya Gez moment, does it mean that the United States has a free hand for aggression? Because, of course, once your forces are out of Iraq, more or less, leaving behind these paid killers, right? It's now called Blackwater XE and then Academy. Now it's called Academy. So the academics remain behind. The academics are still present in Iraq. But now you've got your forces out of there. Where are those forces going to go? Where are those forces going to go? There are a number of schools of thought. One school is that they're already on their way towards the borders of Syria, that they're being massed in Jordan. Some of them may have gone into Turkey to approach from that side. Remember, you've got to, when you attack these countries, you've got to attack through Turkey as well as from the south, as they learned in Iraq all those years ago. It could be that an attack on Syria is going to be set up. We got the George H.W. Bush aircraft carrier in the eastern Mediterranean. That could be one of them. The other school that they're headed towards the Far East, and we'll get to that in just a minute here on World Crisis Radio. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Naturally, you want to keep up with all of this at Tarpley.net, Tarpley.net. On Tarpley.net, you can find my work so far this week. There's an appearance on Russia Today talking about Pakistan, which we'll talk about in a minute. The Russia Today Arabic service will have something from me on Syria, refuting the lies of the imperialist cabal about what's going on in Syria based on my firsthand eyewitness experience, which none of them seems to have. And you've also got some other stuff up there. And remember, go to progressivepress.com, go to Coming Soon, pre-order the Pearl Harbor book. We'll talk about the Pearl Harbor question evolving maybe in the final segment if we can get this other stuff out of the way. So that's Tarpley.net. And Webster G. Tarpley, I had some comments about Ron Paul's economic program. Take a look at that Twitter feed, Webster G. Tarpley. We'll try to talk about Ron Paul's economics, too. He wants to wipe out 80% of the U.S. government based on the debate last night. That sounds rather extreme. That sounds like some people might get hurt in the process in the name of some kind of abstraction which has not yet been explained and which has never been tried. So we'll look into that. So the question now is, if the U.S. forces are somewhat freed up, and this process has been going on now, but we kind of reached a political milestone here this past week, yesterday, with the announcement, the official announcement at least, that it was mission accomplished. That may be revised in the light of history, as these things tend to be. Here we have the Washington Post of today, the 16th of December. China worries about U.S. military's next step after Iraq pullout. The worry in Beijing is that an American military free of the 9-year commitment to Iraq might now be freer to focus attention on the Asia-Pacific, which China considers its backyard. In the past month, China has been after the Obama administration to clarify some of these things. There's a new U.S. military base, Darwin, Australia. Hillary Clinton meddling in Myanmar. And remember, Hillary Clinton in Burma, Myanmar, her goal was to stop the construction of an important hydroelectric dam, important for flood control, irrigation, hydroelectric power, fighting malaria. In other words, the Tennessee Valley Authority was being brought to Burma by the Chinese, and this depraved gang sees it as their function somehow to go in there and abort that and to sabotage it. And this, of course, is absolutely unacceptable, right? We got a depraved ruling class here. They've usurped the name of the United States, and they're attacking American values all over the place. And it's up to the opposition in this country, in the United States, to represent those values. That's what we're trying to do here. So she's aborted this. She aborted this dam as part of her visit. So here we have Shi Yahong, professor at the Center for American Studies at Renmin University, People's University in Beijing. In the past 3 or 4 weeks, the United States has launched so many initiatives so quickly. The motivation is to deal with China. This is really a significant new phase in America's policy towards China. So the idea is put away the old aggression, the failed aborted adventure there in Iraq, and now prepare new adventures, and China at the top of the list. Now, we have had in the past 10 days this important statement from the top of the Chinese government telling the naval forces, in effect, to prepare for war. The Chinese, of course, comes across in a somewhat more nuanced form. It's not quite so lapidary, direct, and blunt. But the idea is prepare for war, and that, I think, is quite significant. It comes in the wake of Obama's idiotic outing to the APAC meeting, the Asia-Pacific Summit in November. I think that was in Hawaii. He talked about the new focus of the United States, that the United States will now meddle in the affairs of the South China Sea. They're going to get involved with, God knows, the Spratly Islands and all of these oil deposits there that are violently contended over by China, Vietnam, the Philippines, and other countries. Even Japan, I think, claims some of them in that region. It looks bad. Now, at the same time, we have this stuff going on with China. There's the other idea is once you've freed up your materials, right, your forces, you can go towards Syria. You could go to the Far East, and then of course there's Russia. And in the case of Russia, let's just look at the external aspect of it. The United States is continuing to manufacture provocations along the border with Serbia. The Serbia-Kosovo area is a big theater for NATO provocations. The Russian Federation has sent some convoys of trucks with humanitarian supplies. And the NATO provocateurs, the NATO gangsters, because they are gangsters in that area, right? That's the crime syndicate that runs Kosovo. They have been interfering with these humanitarian convoys. So what in God's name is that? We've got the ongoing EBM conflict, which is about the acquisition of a first strike by the United States, as was already adumbrated in Foreign Affairs magazine 6 years ago in the spring of 2005, right? That the U.S. is close, they think they're close, to a first strike capability against Russia and or China. So, Serbia, we've got the question of the ABM, which I think strategically is the big one. And now let's look at the U.S. interference into Russia. We've had these demonstrations now this past Saturday. The Saturday demonstrations. How many were there? Well, 20,000, 25,000, 30,000, and then so forth in other cities. The vast majority are in Moscow and then in St. Petersburg, and after that it falls off rather rapidly to smaller groups. A couple of things to say about this. First of all, Moscow is not Russia. Moscow in particular contains a stratum of people, and let's look at them because this is what the U.S., the CIA, and the National Endowment for Democracy are focusing on. There's a stratum of people in Russia who are now between 18 and 40 years old. They may not have, at least a lot of them, may not have or do not have a clear memory of the horrors of shock therapy in the 1990s, when the International Monetary Fund, through Jeffrey Sachs and Anders Aslund and Yegor Gaidar and Chubais ruled Russia, Russia was laid waste. It went into a depression. They lost about one-third of their industrial production. So they can't remember that. We'll be back in a minute. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Webster Tarpley here in Washington, D.C., looking at the strategic emergency, the convergence of the U.S. Mayaguez moment at the same time that forces are freed up. Is it time to look at the Principals Committee saying we now have a free hand for new aggression? We're down to only one official war in Afghanistan, and maybe it's time to add new adventures. Will it be Syria? Will it be the Far East? Will it be Russia? And at the same time, we should have mentioned this at the beginning, and we'll talk about this too, the depression. We now have Madame Lagarde, Madame de Lagarde of the International Monetary Fund recognizes that we have a depression, a world economic depression. How about that? She's only 39 months too late. We've had it since September 2008. So it's 39 months of depression. We've had the whole first wave of the depression. We're now in the second wave of the depression. And there are endless waves, right? It's the waves. And at the same time, we've also got another well-known left liberal mushhead, Krugman, Paul Krugman, who he made a feeble attempt to free himself from the wiles of Obama, but of course he couldn't do it. He has also acknowledged that we have a depression. So we now have a world depression and a Mayaguez moment. So in the Mayaguez moment of 1975, bad as it was, there was no world economic depression. Now we have both. This drives the U.S. British ruling class bonkers. They are off the deep end. Watch out for unexpected aggressive thrusts in any direction. Consider this a war warning, to coin a phrase. This is what's going on. But now with Russia, the key stratum, those are between 18 and 40 years old, in particular in Moscow and St. Petersburg, and to some extent a few other large places. But this is basically it. In the previous cycle, back in the 1990s, you'd look at the state-run intellectual life, and you had these people, you had the academics, the members of the the Soviet Academy of Sciences, and then you have a sort of lower level, the institutchiki. Well, this world is now gone, but now what you have, the bearers of the agitation are what might have been called the young wolves at some point, the hangers-on of the oligarchs, not the oligarchs themselves out in the streets, but their clerks, their brokers, just like in the West, stockbrokers, real estate brokers, insurance brokers, people who are appendages of international globalized finance capital. These are the bearers of the agitation against Putin. In other words, people whose career is like Medvedev, who think like Medvedev. They think the West is cool. They want hamburger diplomacy with Barack Obama. They fawn on Silicon Valley. They obviously fawn on Bill Gates. They fawn on the late Steve Jobs. They fawn on Google. They fawn on Twitter. Profoundly un-Russian. These are the cosmopolitans now of our time. These are the people that got into trouble at various points in Russian history. They are a party of foreigners, right? The Parti de l'étranger, as de Gaulle or somebody like this might have said in France. So they are pro-globalist. They believe in the integration of Russia into the globalist system. The problem is that cannot be done because the Anglo-Americans will not allow it. Look at the 19th century, look at the 20th century. You will find in particular the British and the Russians. This is the constant conflict in world affairs, with very, very few exceptions. And even in World War II, it immediately reasserted itself as soon as the emergency for the British was over. So this is the group that the National Endowment for Democracy has been concentrating on. Now, Putin, much to his credit, Putin is a politician who can face the people. Every year, remember, every year he does 3 to 4 hours of Q&A with people calling in, right? And this is a strength. Imagine Obama doing 3 to 4 hours of call-in, right? Imagine one of these Republican windbags, any one of them. They're all the same. They can't do it. They can't answer inconvenient questions. So Putin, of course,